Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to the Sunday Sample for Corporate Worship Matters. And this is episode 109, and it is Christmas. Well, getting on for Christmas. And today we're going to talk about Christmas carol services and what I'm planning this year. And I'd love to know what you're doing this year. And let's learn from each other because we can get into ruts otherwise, can't we, with these kinds of things. So Christmas carol services. What are your plans for 2019? So I've been thinking about our carol services for several months. I started planning, I don't know, probably back in June or July or something like that, at least in the broad terms. But of course, it's now closer to Christmas. I'm recording this in November, and I've got the orders of service sorted out for the two services, carol services I'm going to be involved in this year for the Thames Valley Churches of Christ and the Watford Church of Christ. And I am posting the orders of service as a link in the show notes. So if you want to look at those, you can see them. Let me share with you what we're doing this year in the Thames Valley service and in the Watford service, and then I'd like to know what you're doing. So here are some thoughts about this year. So the format we're using is a tried and tested format that we've used for several years with slight variations year on year, which is basically a number of popular carols, well-known carols, interspersed with readings, mostly by preteens, but sometimes some other people, and one or two newer songs, perhaps one brand new song each year, and others that aren't quite so well known. Now, both the services are pretty much alike, so let me just combine them in terms of what I'm doing and let you know. So one of the songs we're singing this year is called He Shall Reign Forevermore, and that's by Tomlin and Maher. The links again are in the show notes. We learned it last year, and we're going to do it again this year. I rather like it. The lyrics are well known, though not the tune. And that's He Shall Reign Forevermore. Really like it. It'll be the third song in the opening set for both Thames Valley and Watford. That's one thing. Then this year in Watford, we'll be singing Away in a Manger. We left it out last year. I try to not let most songs be repeated year on year. One or two I think is right to have every year. O Come All Ye Faithful seems to be the right opening song every year. And Hark at the Herald, to me, seems to be the right closing song every year. But nonetheless, in between those two bookends, I have a fair bit of variation. But this year we're going to sing Away in a Manger in Watford. And we're going to begin with one of our preteens, Leah, who plays the flute. She's going to play the tune. I'm going to support her on my melodica. I think for some of the younger people, it's a bit frightening to be all exposed on their own, so I'll do that, and we'll have a guitarist play quietly underneath. But that'll be lovely to hear Leah play the flute. So that'll be for Away in a Manger. And then this year's new song, we are going to learn one new song, which I need to start teaching now, which is called Midnight Clear. It's by Richard Willis, Tomlin, Ed Cash, and Jonas Myron. Again, there's a link to a YouTube video of that in the show notes. And one of the advantages of a song like Midnight Clear is that the tune is quite well known. It's a tune that people will be familiar with, and the lyrics, I would think, as well, to some extent. It's just the chorus that will need to be learnt. So really, I'll be teaching the chorus and reminding people of the tune. There's if you're in a situation like mine, it can be quite hard to find time to teach new songs. It can be handy to teach a song which people know the tune or they know the verse, but then you're learning a chorus. We did this earlier this year with one of the Harvest songs where the tune was familiar. We just learned a short chorus. Or perhaps the other song like He Shall Reign Forevermore, although the tune is different, the lyrics are well known. So you're not learning lyrics and tune. The whole thing is not so unfamiliar, at least part of it is familiar or reasonably familiar. And that can help you if you're time poor, like many of us, and finding it hard to find that bit of space to teach a new song to a congregation. Then why not choose a song where at least the tune or the lyrics are already familiar? That will help you a great deal. That's not so demanding that way. What else are we going to be doing? We're going to be doing performing for a second year a carol I wrote last year called the Bethlehem Carol. And it's a cappella, and we seem to enjoy singing that, so we'll sing that again this year. I might leave it out next year, but 2 years in a row because we learned it last year. And when you learn a new carol, you probably need to sing it at least 2 years in a row before it becomes embedded in the consciousness, musical consciousness of the congregation as well as the worship team. So we'll be doing my Bethlehem Carol. The link is in the show notes. And for communion, we'll be taking bread and wine whilst a performance goes on of the Coventry Carol. There are two versions of that, a 4-part version and a 3-part version. I have transcribed the 3-part version for piano so that I'll be able to accompany it, and then I'll have a soloist sing the tune for that. So that's the 3-part version of the Coventry Carol. And the children will be performing something Christmassy, I am assured, by the children's ministry workers. And that'll be great too. It's wonderful to have the kids involved. So those are some of the highlights. There are other details which are all in the orders of service, which I'm posting on the show, in the show notes. What I'd like to know from you is, what are you aiming for in your carol service? What are your hopes for it? What are your main desires and hopes that it will achieve? What I'm aiming for most years, this is what I'm aiming for, is a mix of the old and the new, the traditional and the fresh. We need some tradition, I think, and we need some freshness. Hopefully there's enough familiarity for people who visit our congregations, who don't perhaps normally come to church. There's enough familiarity with well-known carols so that they'll feel at home and be able to participate and join in. But also some fresh things, or to spice it up for some of us old-timers who've sung these carols a gazillion times. And I love them, and I really like Christmas, and I love Christmas carols. But now and again, we need a few new things, don't we, as well? The involvement of the kids seems to be a particularly significant thing as well. So I'd like to know what you do. What are you doing? What have you tried? What's working? What doesn't work so well for you? Tell us your context as well, because what works in a smaller congregation doesn't always work in a larger congregation, and it depends on the giftedness of your particular musicians and singers. So let us know what you're doing and what your context is. Thames Valley, there'll be over 100 people there. In Watford, we'll have, 30 plus kids or something like that. So those are different contexts, which is why they're slightly different services, although very familiar. And if you have, if you could, and if you feel comfortable with doing this, I would really be grateful if you could perhaps share the outline of your carol service with everybody. Perhaps you could post it online in the show notes, or in the comment box or somewhere. I'm posting the Watford and Thames Valley orders of service. Perhaps you could do that with yours. I'd love to see what you're doing. I might change something in mine for this year, or maybe for next year. But it'd be really helpful to see what we're doing in our different congregations. So the question for today, let me leave you with this question, is this: how do you balance the traditional and the new in your carol service? How do you do that? How do you think about it? Then how do you practically balance the old and the new in your carol service? I'd love to know. So please leave a comment. Anywhere you hear or see this recording, leave it publicly so that we can see it, so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we're learning in a community. If you know anybody who might benefit from this recording, please pass the link on. Hit the notification button, the subscribe button, if you're on YouTube, so that you'll find out when new recordings go up. If you could leave us a review of the podcast somewhere in your podcast review section of wherever you get your podcasts from, that would be fantastic. And of course, I would prefer a rave 5-star review, if you don't mind. That would be really helpful. Thanks so much. And I do hope the next time you gather, and for the carol service, for your carol services, whenever you're having them this December, I pray they're wonderful. I pray they're a fantastic reminder of the joys of Christmas, as well as something fresh and new, and that you find a way to worship together collectively an amazing God who would dare to come to this earth in the flesh and love us. Until the next time, take care and God bless.